We continue our conversation with the Minister of Home Affairs, Malusi Gigaba, and he's been joined by Braam, Hanekom, Director of People Against Suffering and Oppression and Poverty, PASSOP, and also the Head of Department, Religious Studies, University of Johannesburg, Professor Farid Esack. And one of the reasons why we've got Professor Esack is one of the initiatives that the Department of Home Affairs has is something called the Migrant Awards. And I just want to ask Minister perhaps to just set that up a little bit, and then Professor Esack to talk a little bit more on that. So Migrant Awards, I think nominations were open 10th of May, is that correct? What on earth are Migrant Awards?
What we wanted to do is to highlight the positive contribution of migrants in South African society. Secondly, to highlight the positive contribution of South Africans to migrants. Thirdly, to highlight the responsibilities of migrants in South Africa, and to use these awards to encourage more immigrants to play a positive role in South Africa. And fourthly, to also highlight the role of South African expatriates in other countries on the African continent and elsewhere. There are basically there are four important contributions of migration to any society. One, it's in relation to economic development, whether by investors or people living in the country contributing critical skills, or those who travel daily to buy stuff from your retail shops and go sell in their countries. Secondly, they enhance your national security by entering your country as documented migrants, respecting your laws, respecting your regulations. They help you to enhance your national security. You get to know who they are. You can monitor their movement. But thirdly, immigrants contribute towards your social cohesion and nation building. And fourthly, they contribute towards integrating South Africa into the African continent as well as the world at large. There are many migrants over the last 21 years that came to South Africa as migrants, as asylum seekers, as refugees, as economic migrants, or otherwise, but who have become naturalized, who are now as South African as anybody else. And they're making a very big contribution to South Africa. We want to highlight that contribution through these awards and ensure that South Africans understand that it is wrong to argue that migrants are a drain, a burden on the South African economy and on our social services. There is a very positive contribution they are making, and to encourage, therefore, the immigrants to also continue to play that role, knowing that their positive contribution is being recognized and will be rewarded.
Okay. Professor Esack, it sounds like a good idea. Some people are even saying, though, perhaps it's not a great thing because it's further isolating people and highlighting a migrant award. Why don't we just have awards for people doing good things, whether they're South African or whatever? Why now separate and say we're going to look at migrants and say they're doing great things? Can this work? Can it make a difference? Are there unintended consequences?
I don't want to go off on a side. Yeah. I don't want to go off on a side debate, but it is like saying, you don't need a particular section of your company to work on corrective action, or you don't need a particular unit in your company to look at gender transformation. Can the whole of government just be about gender? Often when one starts talking like this, it is also a way of reducing a real problem, that there is a real problem of gender inequality that must be addressed. And so when you say, can we just talk about society in general without focusing on migrants, it's also a way of denying that there are real issues of tensions, that there's a real challenge of integration, that there are stories of communities who have integrated successfully, and that those stories must be highlighted, that there are many, in fact, the overwhelming majority of foreigners and our interaction with foreigners has been to the enrichment of our country, the economic development of our country, the cultural development of our country. If you look at sports, for example, the role of soccer players inside South Africa and South Africa's own affinity for... Okay, so the point that I'm trying to make is this, that focusing on one part of a challenge doesn't mean that you are creating a new problem. You're only saying that this is a particular challenge that we must address. Home Affairs addresses the problems of everybody in the country, but there is a particular need to focus on a particular challenge in a very, at a very opportune, not opportunistic time. This is Africa Month. On the day of the awards, the 25th of this month, it is Africa Day. A very large, not the only, but a very large segment of the victims of xenophobic attacks have been our co-citizens of the continent. And so it's been a very, very opportune moment, and I think quite rightly an area that needs to be zoomed in on.
All right, so nominations have been open 10th of May, and I'm just wondering what kind of stories have been coming through the work of Migrants been doing in South Africa that should be recognized and rewarded?
There has been some amazing stories, and I must be very careful that I don't highlight any of the stories, because I am one of the people on the adjudication panel, so I must be very careful that but there's been stories of amazing people, of people coming from abroad, running huge charities inside southern Africa and based inside South Africa with absolutely no self-interest whatsoever, coming with their wealth into South Africa, building institutions for South Africa, building relationships between their countries and South Africa. There are stories of single mothers who were previous victims of xenophobic attacks themselves and then went on to build and develop organizations that work specifically on the integration of sometimes of specific countries, nationals and South Africa, job creation from small projects to much larger projects, and ordinary activists at a grassroots level who, using taxis, build and found organizations and institutions, building communities, and sometimes these ranges from activism at our magistrates' courts, activism in support of the rights of foreigners inside South Africa, and it also some of the we think brilliant stories is that people who engage in regular action against the Department of Home Affairs when they think that there has been irregularities in law enforcement, that they are also being considered for awards. And so it's also a wonderful reflection on how our country values challenge and being challenged, and the value of the rule of law.
All right. I wonder if there hasn't been a nomination for a broadcast journalist from the SABC who's been in this country since 1991. And I have to say that best years of my life have been as an immigrant and living in this country. So perhaps there's an experience that it's very close to my heart.
If I may take issue with you immediately, I'm a bit surprised because you are the one who used the term alien.
Yes.
And you're one of them.
Yes.
No, we don't use the term alien.
Do you know what?
Alien is a strange and weird being from another planet. A migrant is simply somebody who has come to our country. You're not an alien, bro. Be careful.
And one of the issues is we fill in so many forms when we travel to many parts of the world. And this is where these descriptions come through, isn't it?
These alien descriptions.
Yes,
and it just again shows you what a wonderful country we have.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm stunned when an alien when I have to fill in these forms. What the hell do you think I am, an alien? But mercifully in South Africa, we don't speak about aliens.
All right. So those of you at home who've been wondering why I talk funny, it is because I'm a migrant. There we go.
Let me just, Peter, indicate that there are 6 categories to these awards.
Yeah.
One is for an immigrant sports person.
Right.
You can think of many.
Yes, there's Ndoro who plays very well.
Tendai, Tawarira, you can think of the Beast, you can think of so many.
Yeah.
There is another category for arts and culture. There's a category for civil society organizations or NGOs, a category for a foreign-owned business that is complying with the objectives of the National Development Plan and creating jobs in South Africa. There's a category for a South African community that has integrated well with immigrants. And the award for that would be a legacy project in that community to reward that community for their role in integrating with communities. And the sixth category is for a South African expatriate somewhere else on the continent that is playing a very positive role there, raising the banner of South Africa and ensuring that South Africans are regarded in high esteem in that country. So, the argument can be self-serving that, no, but why are you rewarding immigrants? Why not the whole of community? And I think Professor Esack has explained quite well that that argument in itself could be very self-serving and could defeat the purpose. You have sports awards. Why have sports awards? Why only recognize sports people and not the Malusis of this world who played sport at high school and were not good enough at it? So it's important to recognize different categories of people for the positive contribution they are making overall in society.
Okay. All right. So look, you at home want to be part of this conversation. We've got an audience here as well. So let's start getting your thoughts, starting with Gerrit Fanie Rensburg, who's on table number 9. Gerrit, what's your question?
I've got two things. First is a request.
Or we're having a challenge with that microphone. Is there another one for Gerrit? Okay, all right.
Honourable Minister, thank you very much for the opportunity. I've got two things. First is a request. I represent FIPSA, which is an organisation representing immigration practitioners in South Africa. The first one is to have a meeting with you, sir. We have on numerous occasions asked for meetings, and as there's many issues that we would like to discuss with you, which I think doesn't belong to this forum, please grant us the opportunity to do so. The second one is, in terms of a new legislation, there's numerous erroneous results coming from the department. And we understand we all make mistakes, but the problem that we have is the appeal that we have to do at costs. VFS takes 1,350 Rand. So if an erroneous decision is coming forward, there's another 1,350 Rand to the public. How can we get around that? I thank you very much.
Okay, so two things. An appointment, that's the first one. And then the second one, do we have to keep on paying 1,550 Rand even if mistakes are made along the way?
I think maybe the Director General must respond to these questions and grant the immigration practitioners a meeting, DG.
Okay. DG, Aplen, if you could stand up, we'll get a microphone to you. And a little bit later on, I'm going to ask Deputy Minister Chan to talk a little bit more on the unabridged birth certificates, because that's another contentious issue. But you can deal with this appointment and also the 1,350 Rand that keeps coming up.
No, I've already spoken to the chair
of
the FIPSA when we're coming in them. I said, no, we'll do that meeting.
Okay.
And then from there, we'll go and brief the minister. So we're already arranging that.
All right. And then this amount?
No, with regard to the appeal, what we're saying is that you pay when you submit your application first. But the process is to make sure that you submit the documents which are complete, so that your appeal is not based on insufficient documentation. It must be an appeal based on the content. If there is that, surely now we'll have to go and appeal. If I go to court A and I lose my case there, I don't say when it goes to appeal, I won't pay now because I've paid on court A. But if the mistake was not yours, then we need to look at that. So we are looking at that thing to say, if the problem was not of the client, we cannot say it must be charged for that amount if the question was that we did not take the sufficient. That's why we gave a checklist. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, DG. Table number 10, we're going to find Farai. Table number 10. Now, Farai is my middle name as well, and it means, the South African equivalent Zulu is Jabulani. So it's a really joyous name. So, Farai.
Thank you very much, Minister, for giving us this opportunity. Just first and foremost, I would like to thank you very much for the new Home Affairs. I know we did have a Home Affairs before, but you've become more approachable, and your outcomes are understandable. If it's a decline, there is a reason. So thank you very much for making your department more approachable, and thank you for Nobuhle as well. I've got two questions. The first one is, what's the status of the permanent residence applications? Has there been a change pertaining to who qualifies? The second question that I've got is, the previous quota work permit is now a scarce skills work permit. What happens to the skills that you removed from the old quota work permit? Now, for the scarce skills permit, you find that the skill was there on the old quota work permit, it's no longer there. So how does such a person renew their permit? Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. The status for permanent residence applications is still the same. We have a number of them, and we are trying to deal with them. We have indicated that it's taken us a long time in the past to deal with the permanent residence applications. And where we are now, when we entered into the partnership with visa facilitation services, it enabled us to remove the people who were working at our visa application units in the department and redeploy them, some to the back office to deal with adjudication, to increase the numbers of the adjudicators, and others, of course, we deployed them elsewhere in the organization. And it has assisted us to be able to expedite the processing and adjudication of applications. The visa facilitation centers are assisting us a great deal to ensure that we can streamline the applications, ensure that there is a more professional way for people who are applying to submit their applications and follow all the processes and deal with the adjudication in the department. Now, there have been backlogs in the past that we have dealt with, and some of them are in the process of conclusion. And so going forward, we hope that we are not going to have any backlogs. We will be able to deal with them. The important thing is to try and shorten the period without losing the rigorous checks and balances that we need to undertake as the department when we adjudicate the applications, so that the applicants don't have to wait 8 weeks or even 3 months before they know the status of their applications. I know of a number of people who 6 weeks after submitting their PR applications send me an email asking about the status of their applications, and we have to say to them, wait a bit, we are still dealing with it. I think what people are asking for is not, they're not trying to be a nuisance. They are asking on the department to be a little bit more quick in dealing with their applications. But often these are people who are not under pressure to renew their visas. They are just in a process of applying for permanent residence. And so we are dealing with that. I think we appreciate the compliments. We are continuing to improve the department. The new visa regulations, as you know, with any law, it doesn't apply retrospectively. So you will have to complete your current visa and then apply for a new one based on the new regulations. Because if your skill is no longer regarded as a critical skill, then you will need to come and consult on what other visa you need to apply for so that you can regularize your stay. We are very keen that people should regularize their stay in the country, and we would cooperate in providing the clarity required for you. And I think it's better, rather than deal with generalized cases, to deal with specific cases so that we can handle them and bring them to conclusion. There are decisions we are taking along the way about how to assist people with the transition. For example, as I have been announcing, I am consulting with the Human Resource Development Council about students with critical skills or studying towards critical skills, about how to regularize them in the country without them having to leave the country afterwards. We have taken a decision that people who were in possession of a corporate visa but have a critical skill can convert from a corporate visa to a critical skills visa whilst in the country. So we are taking other decisions to assist in streamlining and lessening the burden on the visa holders so that they can be able to continue working and making their positive contribution to our economy without increasing or creating a burden on them.
All right. Quick question from Duncan Lunga, table number 12. Duncan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. My question is, some people who surrendered their SAIDs for the DZP have got their bank's account.
What is the DZP for our audience at home?
Sorry?
The DZP, what does that stand for our audience at home?
The Dispensation Zimbabwe Project.
Okay.
Yes. So now they have had their bank accounts frozen because of the changed particulars. So the banks are requesting for the letters of confirmation from the Department of Home Affairs to state that they are the same people who originally held the SAIDs. So what is the Minister's position on the issue?
Thank you. I think the DG will write the letters as is necessary. But I think we need to be clear. They did not surrender their South African IDs. They surrendered their fraudulent South African IDs. These IDs were fraudulently acquired. So it was not as if we asked South Africans to surrender their IDs and apply for the dispensation for Zimbabweans permit. They had acquired South African citizenship fraudulently. They came forward at our request, strong request, and we appreciate that. And I think, again, instead of dealing with it in a generalized form, let's bring it to the names of the people to the attention of the Director General. We are in discussions with the banks so that we can deal with those cases directly and assist them so that we don't interrupt their lives. It's regrettable if so many years since 2009, 2010, they still haven't had that issue sorted out. We are going to sort it out. Bring the names forward, we will deal with it.
I've got to take a quick commercial break, but perhaps you can give me a quick answer on this. There seems to be a bit of confusion out there on what is an acceptable form of identity. Passport, ID book. Some companies, banks even, insist on just the ID book. But is a passport sufficient, a South African passport? Because I've got a daughter, she doesn't have an ID book yet. She's got a passport, but she's struggled at the bank, and because some people think that the passport won't do. What is the status as an identity document of a passport ID book?
The passport in some instances is an acceptable form, but people want to see, in many instances, they want to see your ID. So it's things that we need to discuss with the banks, because banks have their own laws with regards to what they want. We know that refugees have been given a lot of headaches, for instance, with regards to what form of identification. And the department is discussing with the banks the forms of identification. I think we will be in a position to enter into an agreement with the banks with regards to that. But again, it's something that we can take up with them in order to deal with.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more of your questions. I know Ayanda is sitting with a number of your tweets, so if you've sent a tweet, listen out. We're going to start acknowledging those and get responses for you. Stay with us.